Hello and welcome. Today we're gonna talk about the basic concepts for teaching and learning. Look at this photo. See, the instructor have different types of students, but still he's asking them to do a certain task. What do you think? Do you believe all of them will be able to climb that tree? Think again. Different students have different abilities, so you cannot judge them all by the same exercise. Let's take a moment to appreciate our teachers. To teach is to learn twice. Teacher should be guiding, not dictating, participating, not dominating. Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20s or 80s. Anyone who keeps on learning stays young. A talented lecturer can significantly improve the learning of students in a class. Now, in the 21st century, there is a certain set of skills for the modern teacher to be able to teach effectively to his students. Number one is commitment. You need to be committed to whatever you're doing. You need to show up in time. Number two is preparation. You have to prepare your materials in advance. You have to understand if you are doing a lecture or doing a discussion and be prepared for surprises. Number three is organization. You have to deliver your message in an organized way. Otherwise, students will not be able to grasp important concepts. Number four is tolerance. Being tolerant to a talkative student inside the class could be troublesome, but with practice, you can develop your tolerability to your students. Number five is storytelling. Who does not like a story? Sharing stories bring people together and work on the affective domain that we will discuss later. Number six, being open for questions. There is no single way of doing things. There are always multiple ways. Being open to question will open the floor for discussions, and the discussions will lead to better active learning. Number nine, being social. Either social with your students, your interaction, or using the social media to communicate with your students on different level. Number 10 is being a geek. Being a geek, someone who's fond of technology, being able to use different applications, mobile phones, laptop, is crucial in modern educational sessions. A good teacher is the one the students remember his classes forever. Now, let's spend some time talking about the approach, method, technique, and strategy we use during our teaching. The approach is the set of principles, beliefs, or ideas about the nature of the learning that can be translated into the classroom. A method would be the systematic way of doing things. It implies an orderly logical arrangement of the steps, and it's more procedural. The technique is the steps we follow when we teach. It's the teacher's style or tricks to accomplish an objective, while the strategy is the long-term plan of action designed to achieve a particular goal. So let's have an example here. So for the teaching experience, you need to have an approach, method, technique, and strategy. So your approach would either be teacher-centered, or learner-centered, or content-focused, or others, while your method would be a lecture, discussion, or activity, among others. For that, you need to use some strategies and techniques. For a technique, you could be using dramatization or role-playing techniques. And for your strategy, you need to use think, pair, share, peer evaluation, among other strategies. Bear in mind that technique and strategies can be used in different scenarios interchangeably. So if you got confused differentiating techniques from strategies, Think of it this way. The technique would be the steps you use in order to teach your student in an organized way, while the strategy is the method you use in order to facilitate the student's learning. Now look at this slide for a second. You see different methods and different techniques. So bear in mind that for each technique you want to use, it has a certain method and vice versa. So for example, if you are trying to do a brainstorming session, a brainstorming technique or strategy, that should be under the activity method, and try to apply that to all other relevant areas. This slide is showing some teaching strategies. Try to look them up yourself when you finish listening to this lecture. Are you having fun already? Enjoy! Now we will talk about the learning process. So people generally remember 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear, and 70% of what they say and write, 90% of what they do. So how do we translate that into the learning process? The active, which is the good learning process, occurs only when you say and write or when you do. So our teaching activity should work towards people saying, people doing, people writing, because at that time people will be able to analyze, define, create, and evaluate, which is a higher cognitive domains. Now we will talk about the revised Bloom's taxonomy. So Bloom in the 40s with his colleagues worked for several years trying to classify the cognitive domains for learning and try to put that in a specific order. And he worked for many years and received a revision in 1964 and another revision in 2001. So right now we will be talking about the revised Bloom taxonomy of 2001. So there is a cognitive domain, which is the thinking domain. You have the affective domain, which is the feeling domain, and the psychomotor domain, which is the doing domain. The structure of the cognitive process, according to Bloom and his colleagues, is like a pyramid. It starts with remembering and understanding of knowledge, then application and analyzing data, then evaluation, and finally creation. The development on the affective domain includes receiving and attending of the students by the awareness of the concept, having enough intellectual development to appreciate the concept, and being open to listen, willingly to pay attention. And response from the students is by passive compliance, responding with initiatives, and personal satisfaction and motivation. Then valuing by acceptance and preferring a subject and showing commitment to doing, for example, the activities. Organizing all the values into one's own value system and finding the relationship between those values and establishing a hierarchy of those values. The development in the psychomotor domain is self-explanatory. It's the lab skills, the workshop skills, the communication skills, and to stress on the non-verbal communicatory behaviors and the politeness with colleagues and with the patients and working in a professional manner, and the well-known gross body movements and fine coordinated body movements. So what makes the qualities of a good lecture? It should not be too long, because the attention span of the average person is from 12 to 20 minutes. It should address a single theme, so to prevent confusing. It should explain technical terms carefully and using familiar examples and analogies. Establishing fluency in technical content, using illustration and examples whenever possible. Build on the existing knowledge of the students. and implies a variety of approaches. And how can we do that? By not assuming that the students are at the same level as the teacher. They were invited to participate in the process. Every rationale was made clear at the relevant places, and the thought process at every stage was made clear. Thank you so much.